Good morning, everybody. My name is Jase Watford, and I'm a volunteer for Mandy and the PACE organization. I do a lot of volunteering these days because of two specific reasons. One, that my personal life experience is relatable and has a good effect with people that are of the vulnerable populace, and two, a lot of the clients at PACE specifically are clients at the Salvation Army Men's Shelter, where I work as an intake worker. When facing chronic or absolute homelessness in Thunder Bay, there's a uniqueness to it because it's a hub where locals are already existing there, and then those off the reserves meet. Working solely at the Salvation Army, it was difficult to make the connections needed to build a trusting relationship, and that our clients would actually let me provide assistance to them. But I'm sure most of you know what that's like. You know, your personal ethics may not always coincide with your agency, but you have to foster a congenial atmosphere at all times, and you have to follow the rules. However, as a volunteer, my role is a lot different. My role is to be me. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. So I'm not viewed as a potential jailer when I'm out volunteering. The guys are not on guard. The Salvation Army adopts an abstinence-based stance, and my own personal experiences are that of harm reduction. So by working with the guys in a more casual, less formal environment, it helps me at my own agency. I'm able to gain trust, build relationships, and the guys are more willing to work with me. It helps open up a dialogue and a conversation when previously a dialogue wasn't even possible. It helps in my daily approach, as with my lived experiences, I don't have a difficult time putting myself in someone else's position, because the odds are high I've either been through it or I've seen it. I don't ever use the words, "I know what you're going through," or "I understand," because my own experience is mine, and by assuming the former, I don't validate what an individual has just told me. When I make it about myself, especially if I say, "I understand," I lose the direction of the conversation, and when I'm at work, I'm not the most important person in the room. However, today I've been asked to speak to you about my experiences, which is a new thing for me. Not telling my story, mind you, because that's become old hat, except telling my story in a place where the audience has chosen and in some cases paid to be here. Having talked in recovery rooms, shelters, hospitals, places I've lived, places where individuals are obligated to sit, where I was obligated to sit, loathing the skin that I'm in, hating the facilitators, hating the programs, hating how life was in general. It's just crazy to think that I'm here now. I was asked to come and share my story, and as a result, I get a flight and a hotel room covered. Almost makes what I went through worthwhile. Almost. In the vein of transparency, however, if my negative experiences can bring about a positive, it makes what I went through worthwhile. So I'm grateful for this opportunity and to be put in a hotel that has a water slide. I've been diagnosed with bipolar, ADHD, OCD, PTSD, and a substance abuse disorder. Now, the best part about getting 5 labels is I will get the 6th one for free. Originally, I started off with undiagnosed but manageable bipolar and ADHD, but the others were subsequently tacked on later in my life. You all know there's a certain comorbidity and a dual diagnosis effect one can get as an ongoing result of traumas and homeless experience. You'll notice that I deflect with humor. It's one of the healthier means I've found to cope. I started coping with food at first when I had institutional stays, but the weight gains always messed with my emotional regulation. Eat to get happy, be unhappy that I ate. Having issues with food insecurity, I'm extremely thankful for this invite. The food being offered today is a nice change from what is being offered at the food banks back home. I'd rather eat here than the random canned goods I have at home in my cupboard. If I knew the food was going to be this good, I probably would have brought some Tupperware. You're laughing, but I'm not even kidding. So I was born here in Toronto, Victoria Park and Ellesmere to be exact. Not exactly in the middle of those two streets, but that's where I grew up. I was born to an abusive home of lower socioeconomic status. My father had schizophrenia and my mother complex PTSD. So from an early age, my brother and I experienced all forms of abuse: physical, psychological, sexual, and emotional. I developed hypervigilance towards people, and everything became some kind of a threat assessment. It made elementary school impossible because I hid from people and I hid in corners. So my mom split from my dad when I was 11. My dad killed himself that year on my mother's birthday. My mother went off the deep end, became ultra-violent because she couldn't comprehend her own emotions, and she'd take it out on my brother and I. It was a healthy mix, or unhealthy mix, of emotional, psychological, and physical abuse. I was conditioned, and I still have a hard time around certain foods, cigarettes, loud voices. There's a lot of things I've worked past, but this is a lifelong journey for me. I started fighting back against my mother, dropped out of school, and was thrown out at 16, where I couch surfed until I was 18. I was a part of the hidden homeless community, but I don't count that as my homeless journey is officially starting until the year of 2008. After Toronto, I moved to Alberta, and somehow my coping turned me into a sociopath. I crippled and corrupted everything I could for my gain. I had no remorse, and behind my charming smile was a furious anger, which I hid in my career-based motivation. It paid off, career-wise, at least for a while. I worked in nightclubs, radio, did all kinds of promotional stuff. So I ended up moving from Alberta to Vancouver, where I thought I could take it to new heights, and ultimately caught on working on a cruise line, and I went to sea. Now, it's hyperbole and cliche, but wherever you go, you take yourself with you. You can't keep a cork on a bottle that is destined to pop. So going to sea, it helped me run, and I became a victim of my own success by hiding in my work. I started as a DJ, and I finished as a senior assistant cruise director, where my mental health popped. I exploded into my first full-blown mania, and was immediately terminated and dropped off in the port of Vancouver. Now, this is where I begin my homeless journey. Now, I've just lost an 8-year career at sea because of my newly becoming aware to me but old mental health problems. I landed in Vancouver right in the midst of a mania. I was lost and I was confused. I had no money, no friends, no family. So I checked myself and my 2 bags of clothes into a homeless shelter. The shelters in Vancouver are overcrowded and time sensitive, so 2 weeks was the max that I could stay. And because I hadn't been in Canada for 8 years, I couldn't get immediate support. So no welfare, no doctor, nothing until I'd been a resident in that province for more than 3 months. I was not well mentally. Technically, I was out of options. And if my mental state was better, I could have found alternatives. But the mania that was thriving inside of me figured it would be a great idea to buy a tent and join all the locals down at the tent town in East Hastings. So 3 months turned to 6 before I got on welfare. My mental health eroded at a furious rate. I turned to substances to manage, because, I mean, honestly, who wakes up, opens their tent flap in the Lower East Side and says, "Man, this is a great morning to be around"? It doesn't exist. It became a hustle just to survive. You know, and the thing is, nowadays, people don't really want to hear the truth when I talk to them about my life. And that truth is that the man before you has been severely abused. He is mentally ill. He deals with addiction issues and lived on the street. That same man, while on the street, was ignored, spit on, and shamed by the passers-by that when that man went seeking help, he was constantly told he was hopeless and was refused service by the professionals whom he asked for help. Homelessness, addiction, mental health, food insecurity, it's all intermingled. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But that stress is the invisible killer. Dr. Gabor Mate, in some of his interviews, has been quoted as saying that we are in a punitive system, one that is built to add volumes of stress on people who are already stressed. Can you imagine your livelihood, your life on the line each and every single day? It goes from a regular person's month-to-month existence to a second-by-second existence. Homeless individuals will sacrifice the future to make the present more manageable. After the first year in Vancouver, I left for Nanaimo. Fortunate for me, my substance abuse was noticeable enough that after 6 months of rotating between Park Bench and the Salvation Army, I was accepted into treatment. It was getting to a point of no return because I needed consistent shelter. 3 hots and a cot. I will take that every day of the week, which is why I was considering robbing a liquor store, because prison had to be better than the street. It was dry, it had food, and the way I saw it, the same animals are in prison that are on the street. But sometimes the worst prison to be in is the one that you're carrying with you. I completed the treatment program, got out, failed at life. Again, because I had no follow-up support. But I've learned something with that, and that treatment will take me again. You can keep going back to treatments as much as you really want. So I went to treatment again, I got out, and failed again. Now, treatment helped me to a point. I became less feral, less crazy, enough to know that I needed to fight for a change. Because if no one was going to help me, I needed to help myself. I took up a local agency's offer for a bus ticket out of province. I did some research, and the sketchy homeless guy version of research is less than the research people do before they repost things on Facebook. So I chose Kenora. Like I said, I was less crazy. I don't know why I chose Kenora. Just happened to happen, but I call it a fortuitous bounce because went to Kenora and again, taking my problems with me. I didn't last a couple days. I ended up getting all smashed up and landed in the detox. But the detox, something changed there. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but it was support that I'd not seen in British Columbia. Ontario's got different support, and I don't know if I got lucky, but I went from detox to Delart Manor, which is a halfway house in the remote woods of Keewatin, and from Delart Manor that led to the Sister Margaret Smith Centre in Thunder Bay. And now that's where things completely changed, because the first time I was treated for my mental health, which addressed my poor coping skills. I went from the Smith to 3C's post-treatment halfway house to Seaway Apartments, which is an observed sober living apartment. So there's other individuals living under the same scenario. But you see now that I'm stuck in the recovery narrative because it was the only avenue that I could use to get off the street. So going to Narcotics Anonymous does very little to combat untreated mental illness, and in many cases it makes matters worse. I may have had a consistent roof over my head, but I'm still living out of black bags at that point, I wanted to work, I wanted to make some money, but it's very difficult to secure meaningful employment when your address and telephone number are that of an institution. It's nigh impossible to procure a home in a safe environment without spending every cent you get from Ontario Works. And in Thunder Bay, it's like the landlords intentionally set the bar too high. They know how to avoid my kind. Subsidized housing is anywhere between 2 and 5 year wait if you're single. I could make and have a child and then get into family assisted living faster. So forgetting getting a place, I needed a job first to be able to get a place. So having more than 6 years with nothing on a resume makes it difficult to gain decent employment. You can't put just finding yourself. And lying about where the time went just makes my stress, guilt, and shame more prominent. And to be honest with you, I just can't lie anymore. Running from my past and from who I was takes so much energy. If some people cannot accept me for who I am, so be it, but that's on them. I'm not gonna lie to make other people happy, because when I do so, it makes me unhappy. I still can't get job interviews. I'm only working at the Salvation Army because I volunteered with them first, so they're able to look past my history, and then they approached me about working for them. So that recovery narrative managed me many one-offs with so many medical professionals. I was waitlisted with so many places to have my mental health looked at. I was frustrated at 2 years of constant referrals and repeat referrals. And I kid you not, 8 referrals for one psychiatrist from 6 different healthcare providers. Having been seen by so many professionals and each having different ideas as to what ailed me, I wanted a fresh diagnosis. I wanted to be seen and psychoanalyzed without starting at a psychologically predetermined axiom. I found out fast having my own agenda and telling the doctor what I wanted was offensive to her. I wasn't honoring her doctorate, and she wasn't honoring my lived experience. We began immediately at an impasse, when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And I get it, the medical model doesn't generally meet the client at their level. Client-centered or person and environment as the starting point isn't pragmatic. Even though in my personal life I was making some incredible gains, I was subsequently fired after 3 sessions with this psychiatrist. She, disregarding my success in counseling transcripts, was unwilling to make new client-patient analysis and demanded that I take the original medications which caused uncontrollable rage and suicide attempts as a condition for her service. There have been 4 medications to this point which have caused severe reactions which I ended up suicidal and in a merge, and she wanted me to take 2 of them. This was also the psychiatrist with the 8 referrals too. Question: is the voice of the consumer really heard? The answer is sometimes, because I did manage to see a wonderful woman at the Smith, not a psychiatrist, but just a counselor. She agreed to non-time sensitive treatment. We go until I don't need to go. That's a huge sigh of relief when you don't have that panic every night of what am I going to do tomorrow, and I don't have anybody to help me. Being in school now, I understand her frameworks, and in a sense, it's helped me with my career path. A social worker is a generalist. They own a versatile skill set. We did away with CBT, worked a lot of mindfulness, a lot of strength-based practices. I'm sure there was some DBT in there as well. Now I exploded again, but the good kind of exploding. She used a model called internal family systems, which focused on finding out who Jase was. What is his soul self? What makes him authentic? I never had a sense of self or any semblance of self-esteem. What was authentic to me was wanting to know who I was. I was never given a chance. I was who I was by necessity, not by choice. I started learning with her. I worked on finding my strengths. I was seeing her twice a week at first, and with nothing else going on, stable roof over my head, I started to find out who Jase was. And what we found out was shocking. I have an eidetic memory, perhaps formed through trauma, but my ability to retain information was mind-boggling. We channeled my hypervigilance into things that will help me in the future. It wasn't perfect. There's a lot of trial and error, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but we'd meet up, we'd go over things, deal with the failures, deal with the emotions attached, work on the successes. What are the steps that I can make to better deal with, failures in the future? Focus on the good, reframe my thinking. Neurons that fire together, wired together. It's simple laundry. You wash, you rinse, you repeat. Realizing that I wasn't some dumb deadbeat with a grade 10 education, I wanted to go back to school. Still thinking I wasn't smart enough, though. It took me 4 tries to pass the mature student test at the local college. And whoever said that you don't need anything more than grade 9 math in life was right, unless you want to go back to school. I'm now in my 3rd year at post-secondary. I was in the social service worker program at my local college, and I'm now at Lakehead University working towards 2 degrees, a bachelor in philosophy and my honors bachelor in social work. I carry an 85 grade average across all 3 years. I've volunteered with over 9 agencies in the last 2 years, on top of working with the Salvation Army, where I create programming and I help advocate for those who struggle with the same issues I had. I will not be leaving school until both my master's in social work and my PhD in education are complete, because the way I look at it, if Trump can become president, a homeless guy can get his doctor. But unfortunately, though, as funny as that is and how true that is, I'm still on the system right now. I have to use food banks. I collect handouts from the government, and this isn't a lack of skill or effort on my part, because I believe I've got a lot of drive. Somehow yet, I'm still stuck. I wonder if I'm going to be on the system when I go for my master's and PhD. My experiences may define me, but it's not my identity. Living on the street is the least interesting thing about me. Societal constructs constantly ruin this world. And if I look at someone as a preconceived label, I lose who that person is. Quick fixes, time-sensitive treatment, these are surface band-aids covering deep wounds. There's very little prevention. There's no sustainability, at least from where I stand. Top-down approaches, needing shovel-ready projects, no communication between the silos. Hell, man, I work for one of the city's homeless shelters, one of the 2. And there's a better than competitive nature where both agencies badmouth the other. WTF? Why are we not working together? Is collaborative care just a concept I read about in my textbooks? What I've come to understand is that no matter how much education I get, no matter what I achieve in life, a part of me is still going to be out there. You can take the kid off the street, but you can't take the street out of the kid. Being on your side of the fence doesn't grant me a full view of going on just yet, but I do see the politics, the machination of government, which either binds or slows policy changes. And to be honest with you, I am frustrated. Not from my experience of the past, but with what I see now going on around me. At times I wonder which side has more issues, those that are homeless or the system that's designed to help them. As horrible as my experiences were, I do consider myself blessed. It affords me the opportunity to talk to people about it. lets me work right on the front lines with comfort and no fear. It allows me to forge relationships with those still out on the street who are at risk. And it's one thing to tell someone that they're not alone, but it's another thing to feel that you're not alone. That kind of reassurance is what saved me. It's why I'm here talking to you now. It's why I want to advocate and speak publicly about it. I needed hand-holding to lead me to this new land. I needed people I trusted who could convince me that I wanted to be in this new land. Rome wasn't built in a day, but thankfully all roads lead to Rome. And as hard as it was, I finally got there. I may be still on public support, but I dream of the day that I'm off it. I don't want to need assistance from the government. I know I'll need assistance from friends and stuff like that, but I don't want to collect a government paycheck. There's still a lot of healing I need to do. Both my shoulders are shot from sleeping outside. My teeth are eventually going to need to be replaced. My stomach, my back, my colon, they're in rough shape. Psychologically, my mind's a lot better, but I still have some oddities that have lingered over time. I still wear flip-flops in the shower. I have a room to myself, and I still shower with flip-flops in me. There's still some institutional behavior that's still in there. I still eat and drink at a high speed, eating like I'm never going to get a meal again. But things have changed for me, even if some policy and people's judgments haven't changed all that much. I've had a few dreams that I created back when I was homeless, and while I still don't have a place of my own, it's part of a housing initiative. It's with off-of-court housing, and it's in a regular building, so it's subsidized housing with regular people. One of my other dreams was that I wanted to work at the Salvation Army to give back to the agency that was instrumental in helping me get off the street. I also wanted to go back to school, which I'm doing, and I may pull off the impossible and one day be called a doctor. Most importantly, I wanted to speak to people about my experience, to shed light into the fact that cycles can be broken. I'm not perfect. I've got many chinks in my armor, but I'm not stuck in the same cycle that plagued my family before me, and neither is my brother. He's a teacher. He's an incredible father. We can remove the apathy, the learned helplessness, become assertive, ditch the enabling and the people-pleasing, understand our worth so we can take control of our lives. Empowerment is built with other people. One person cannot make it alone. I owe so much gratitude to a number of the people who taught me that the longest journey that I'll have to travel in my life is the 13 inches from my head to my heart. Being a budding philosopher, I want to leave you with this. In life, we need acceptance of our being, a reciprocation or acknowledgement. Those who live in poverty often do not get acknowledged. There's no recognition of self, therefore no true identity is forged. I lived for so long with nobody willing to admit I existed, or what they saw was a fragment of who I was. They saw a label or a preconceived idea of a preordained societal construct: addict, deadbeat, bum, crazy person. So you've sat here and you've listened. You've acknowledged my existence, my life narrative as told to you, and by doing so, you recognized the other. You let me fulfill a dream today, and you are all a part of it. So thank you so much. This is a moment that I'll always hold dear, and hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you both so much for sharing your experiences, your stories, the ups and downs, and just it's remarkable, the journey that